Wednesday was a big day. Big day on Wednesday. Manny Machado set a Padres record. Josh Hader, 3 straight days, closing things out for the Friars. First 3-game series sweep of the season. That's not what I'm referring to, though. I'm talking about threads, fellas. Threads. I knew. I did that just for the quizzical look on Derek's face. That was exactly, I knew that was coming.
They got new uniforms? What?
City Connect 2s, dude.
The second City Connects. That would be awesome. Who doesn't like new uniforms? No, you didn't hear about the Twitter replacement, Derek? I mean, a big social media guy like you, I thought you'd be all over that.
Enlighten me.
You know how Elon is kind of cratering Twitter and everybody's angry about it. So Zuckerberg, in his meta universe with Instagram, started a Twitter replacement where you can basically just take like your Instagram profile, migrate it over with all your followers, and boom, it looks like Twitter. It doesn't function completely like Twitter, but now there's like a massive, like 70 million people within like X amount of hours, half a day on Threads. It's a new age,
so
Derek.
You get to go from one out-of-touch billionaire with unchecked power to another out-of-touch billionaire with unchecked power,
and hang out with all your
great plan.
Hang out with all your same friends. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong with that? So
yeah,
Derek,
I did miss that one, but thank you for filling me in. And now that I see what it is, if Zuckerberg and Meta are involved, I have no interest.
I figure that might be the case. I feel like we can lure Todd in. Hopefully we can lure Todd in.
So I read a little bit about Threads this morning, and I said, I got to give it a try. I'm going to keep it an open mind here. As a person who used to love Twitter for what it was, I'm down with Threads if it can get anything close to it. It's kind of like the DH in the National League. Originally, I was not for it, but now I'm down with it. Right?
That's
Threads
a great analogy, actually, Todd. That's that might be a fantastic analogy.
It's a perfect analogy. So maybe we'll talk about Threads, but I think we'll mostly talk about the Padres, and for good reason. It's been a promising few days for the club. Before we get going, thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Fire podcast. For over 30 years, OG's has been crafting award-winning microbrews with over 60 medals in international, national, and regional competitions. They are one of the most decorated breweries in the world, with each OG's location having 12 proprietary OG's beers on tap. OG's every few years launches a new menu. This year, they focus on bringing new items that help keep OG's fresh and on trend. How about this, fellas? Mediterranean salmon bowl. That sounds like be right up Derek's alley after a hard workout. Something kind of some lean protein, vegetables.
Salmon. Salmon is well done. Yes, it's fantastic.
2 new specialty pizzas, tri pepperoni. I'm very curious about the tri pepperoni, big pepperoni guy, and a ricotta pizza, buffalo cauliflower, and a Nashville hot chicken sandwich. OG's loyalty program, super easy. You can do it online. You can earn loyalty points, rewards, and exclusive offers, all of which leads to fun and free food. And you can order online from OG's. It's easier than ever to order OG's straight to your door. Time for the walk-up music. It wasn't the Angela Lansbury rendition of the walk-up music that Derek put together. I enjoyed that, kind of the concept episode. Who's murdering the Padres? Let's get to the bottom of it.
Well, we had to figure out some way to not just sit there and rant and rave for an hour on just how horrible things were. It was more like, how do we amuse ourselves for like a half hour and then actually get into the real nitty gritty? So it was more out of necessity than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, these episodes can start to feel a bit Groundhog Day-ish, when they're in these phases that they've been in pretty much all season. And hopefully, fingers crossed that this is the start. Maybe they are turning over a new leaf. Go check out that episode. You two kind of trying to solve the murder mystery that is the Padres so far this season. There's been a few episodes. If you haven't caught them, great conversation with Greg Garcia, former Padre, local guy. Awesome insight on the Padres, some guys he played with, and how much blame do you put on a manager and a coaching staff in a situation like this? What else did we do, Derek, recently? We graded some of the players to this point in the year and kind of gave our projections. Yep. That was a good one. And always
John Conniff was on. Yeah, talk about some of the younger guys. If there's any help on the horizon.
Yeah, we had a good 15, 20 minutes on Ethan Salas. I know there's a big appetite for Ethan Salas content. So go back and check those out if you haven't already. And thanks for joining us, whether it's on your podcast app, NBC San Diego streaming. We are currently live on the NBC7 YouTube page. Hit the chat. Let us know what you think about the Padres, and we'll be sure to get that. So thanks for spending your time with us and enjoying, in air quotes, the season with us. The premise of this episode, the title, are the Padres finally figuring things out? And Derek, you kind of snarled a little bit when you saw that pop up on the screen.
Because they're not. Like
end of episode.
It's three games. It's here's the thing. It's three. I have fallen into this trap, this self-inflicted, so many damn times.
Derek, a journey starts with a single step.
Yeah, it's like they start to look really good, and then this is it. This is when they start to really look like the team we all thought they were going to be, and then nope, and they lose 5 out of 6 on the road, dropping leads to Pittsburgh and Washington and Cincinnati. It's like they, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I'm gonna reserve judgment. Now, what I was encouraged about against the Angels was how workmanlike it felt. It was like didn't have to be some sort of dramatic comeback. There didn't have to be some sort of 3-0 down in the ALCS to try and come back like the Red Sox had to knock off the Yankees. It was just like, oh, we gave up the lead. Okay, we'll go and get it back. Oh, we gave it up again. Okay, we'll go get it back. Oh, Josh Hader needs you a third day in a row. Okay, I'm going to get out there and do it. It was the way that this team should have been acting and playing the entire year, where they go out and it's just a bunch of fundamentally sound Ha-Sung Kim making tremendous defensive plays along the way. Just we're better, so we're going to play like it and just beat you 3 straight games. It's not dramatic. It's just solid. That's kind of the vibe that I got out of it. And before it was like you have the piñata and the sombrero and we're trying to hype ourselves up. And then the second something starts to fall apart, it all crashes down and the emotion starts to come back. This is much more even keel. It felt like, okay, we're a good baseball team. We're showing everyone a good baseball team. Rinse and repeat tomorrow. That was the thing that maybe has me the most excited about this right now, although tempering it, obviously, that this might be the vibe, the attitude, and the mental space this team should have been in all year. If they got the mental space down, we might be on to something.
I'm encouraged. It's not, we're back. And we're finally figuring things out. But I am encouraged, as Darnay, as you said, it starts with a step. And for the reasons Derek said, it's a positive first step. Because it felt like it was a workmanlike series against the Angels where they let their talent and their baseball excellence shine. We also saw some signs of life from Xander Bogaerts, who's been really struggling. So that was encouraging. So the way they won that series against the Angels was encouraging as well, from contributions from Xander and some other guys who've been struggling. And it felt like just a workmanlike, normal, rock-solid Padre effort rather than some 13-1 explosion or something like that. So, Darnay, I'm encouraged, but I'm not staying there finally figuring things out. Let's get closer to 500 before we say that. Or maybe creep over a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think there were promising signs going back to the Red Series. I mean, you lose in a walk-off Friday, and so you had the opportunity to win that game was right there.
They had it won 3 times and then lost.
That's 2 sides of the coin. They handled business. They had one of those kind of, typical Padres seemingly out of nowhere outbursts on Saturday. And then they showed some, a little bit of grit Sunday, back-to-back homers to get back into that game. And then Nick Martinez serves one up. He's up one. So all 3 games, I mean, that one, that was a series that was, pretty close to potentially being a sweep. And, Bob Melvin was asked about that Monday before the start of their series against the Angels. And he was like, look, we're not in the business of silver linings at this point. Like, we just need to win games. But the tone, and Todd, you were there. I mean, the tone was like, okay, yeah, we showed some stuff. We showed some promising signs. And so I think, when things did not go their way, it's very easy to be like, this team is lost. It's hopeless. 3-13 since that Rays series where you felt like they were turning things around. But, if you read between the lines a little bit, there is maybe some reason for optimism. So with that being said, it was good to see them like make it real against the Angels and not just kind of revert back to some of those struggles. And so I don't know, I find myself maybe drinking the Kool-Aid once again. I mean, what a matchup of two like wildly disappointing teams. How perfect is it that the Mets and the Padres are facing each other to wrap up the first half? Yep. And so maybe it's like bowl season. How many bowl games outside of like the major brand bowl games come down to who wants to be there? Like, who wants to be in Shreveport? Who wants to be in El Paso or Albuquerque? You know what I mean? The team that wants to be there is probably going to end up winning. And the team that feels like they're bummed out, not that excited about being there, probably going to be a rough start to a rough finish to their season. And so I have,
I dare you disparage the Music City Bowl, Darnay.
I'm sorry. No disrespect to the fine folks in Shreveport, right?
Nashville for the Music City Bowl.
That one's Nashville.
Shreveport's Liberty. The Frisco Bowl.
The Frisco Bowl, yes.
Well, what's interesting to me is about this Mets-Padres series coming up. If one team sweeps the other team, if a team gets swept, either the Mets or Padres, they're just about buried. You'll be roughly, possibly 9 out with, 6 to 8 teams ahead of you. That would be hard to handle for either one of these two disappointing teams if there's an extreme in this series. So just keep an eye on that. If one of these teams lays down, as you said, like they don't want to be at the Music City Bowl and they get walloped in this 3-game series heading into the All-Star break, that could be a sign that they've checked out big times, which I don't think that'll happen, but something to keep your eye on. If the Padres keep playing well, they could essentially end the Mets season right here. I have a feeling.
That's so interesting to say because, I mean, being at that 3-game series at Citi Field last year, like it felt like both of these teams were just going to, and then with the off seasons they had, just going to take off. I mean, it felt like they both had the right skippers in place. I still love Buck Showalter. I mean, and all of a sudden he's on the chopping block, which might just be the product of the New York media and all the very the high in intensity that they go after. Because one thing goes wrong, they call for everybody to be fired. But it feels like there's some real tension going on in New York. And during this 3-game sweep, the Padres actually jumped over the Mets, the Pirates, and the Cubs. So they only now have 3 teams ahead of them to get to that last wild card spot instead of 6 teams. And that happened over the course of 3 games. So maybe some of the doom and gloom that at least I know I was feeling, because you look up, it's maybe not just the 8 games that they were out of a spot, but they had 7 teams in front of them. You can't expect all of those teams to start falling apart completely. But then when you jump over 3 of them in three games, you're going, okay, maybe other teams are having some serious, fissures in the foundation as well. So it gives you a little bit more hope that's going to happen. Plus, you get the Dodgers to start, the Mets to finish the first half, and then you get 4 against the Phillies at Petco Park to start off the second half. So, or is that on the road? That's gonna be on the road, right? Yeah, in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia to start.
How about a traditional doubleheader on Saturday?
Yeah.
How great is that? That's going to be awesome. Everybody wants to be in the humidity of Philly in July playing 2 baseball games. That's going to be awesome.
I was just there. It wasn't too bad. So hopefully it's that way.
It's so that's then you get 4 against the Phillies, who right now have the last wild card spot. So in this next 7 games on the schedule, of course, with the 4 games off because of the All-Star break, you can make some serious headway getting back into this thing. Take 3. Let's say you sweep the Mets, who have checked out, and then take 3 out of 4 and in Philadelphia. Like, you're right back in this thing. That would be, again, we start talking about pie in the sky, what needs to happen. But if you look at it, they need to get to about 90 wins from here on out. That means they have to go 48-25, more or less, to get to 90 wins. That's playing right around 46-50 baseball, which is right around what we thought this team would be able to do for a large stretch of the season. If they can do that for a half the year, then we're going to be talking about playoff baseball again, which again, they dug themselves a giant hole, but it's certainly, they can still see the top right now. It's not like they started pouring dirt back in the hole when they're at the bottom.
Yeah, a team that is very interesting to watch going forward are the Marlins, because they have
sustainable, right?
Run differential of -7, and they lead the wild card race 3 games ahead of the Dodgers, who have a run differential of +61. So that gives you an idea of the wide swath between the two. Padres are at +35, but beyond that, they are 21-5 in 1-run games, which is like, I mean, Padres were really good last year. That's like on another level. They're 4-1 in extra inning games. So again, like this sustainability question with them has to come up at some point. Like you wonder, if things don't bounce their way a little bit, that's another team that's like, they're way ahead at this point, but you could conceivably see them kind of come back to the pack at some point.
Yeah, switching sports like the Vikings last year. Like they're not going to go 11-0 in 1-score games.
Yeah.
Like that's just not going to happen over the long term of 2 or 3 seasons. Now, and again, in a baseball season, it's 162 games. Unless this is just a blessed team that has all the right pieces that we didn't realize, they're just not going to continue to go, win 21 out of every 26 1-run ball games. That's just not going to happen. They have to regress to the mean at some point.
Yeah. And even when you dip below the Marlins, you guys, the Dodgers, we know the Dodgers have been excellent for so many years, but they are dealing with huge, massive problems to their pitching staff. Dustin May was just shut down for the year. Walker Buehler doesn't look like he's going to get back. Julio Urias is now struggling. Kershaw just went on the IL. So there are a lot of issues with the Dodgers that haven't been there in previous seasons. So they're not the Dodgers of years past. So there's even some vulnerability when you think of the mighty Dodgers. So no one in that National League wildcard chase scares me or should scare the Padres. And I don't think anyone's going to run away. So it's even conceivable, even as Derek said, like 90 wins is a target, but it even may be a few games less than that this year to get in. So as strange as it is to say, Padres are not dead yet. Pretty good shape, somewhat.
Two things there. One, the Dodgers pitching staff is in disarray until they trade for Shohei Ohtani and Dylan Cease at the deadline, and then they're fine. And two, the other team we haven't talked about yet is the Diamondbacks.
Yeah,
we knew they would be better this year. I don't know if they're sustainable. I mean, they've dropped 7 of the last 10. I'm not sure how much more they're going to be able to handle. And also, what are they going to do with the trade deadline? Remember, they have a young club, and they got some good, exciting young ball players. But outside of their top 2 starters, in Gallen and Kelly, they don't have a whole lot in the rotation. So do they fancy themselves buyers? Do they go out and get one of these arms that might be on the market, a Lucas Giolito, who I'd love to see the Padres take a run at, especially with Michael Wacha now possibly looking at a prolonged injured list stint? If they decide to hold pat or stand right where they are, thinking, okay, we're a year early anyway, anything else on here is gravy, that will tell you they might be able to be gotten, and they might regress to back to closer where they were, an 85, 86 win team in the National League West. And that could let the Padres jump, maybe because they're the leaders in the division, maybe they become a team you're fighting for a wild card spot with at some point, because you got to figure the Dodgers, with all their prospect capital, have to go out and make some kind of move, because I don't think they want to be a wild card team right now. Although it would be so baseball if the Dodgers get in the wild card and all these last decade of them being 100-win team, 111-win team, they don't win a World Series, they sneak in as the 6th seed and win the whole damn thing. That would be so baseball. Their worst team is the one that wins it all.
A couple thoughts on the Diamondbacks and the Giants. You got 7 games against each in the second half. Which at this point seems a little bit more notable with the Giants, who are 6 games out at the moment. And so obviously with division teams, you got an opportunity to, do damage to them and help yourself all in one fell swoop. And there's a stretch there. I mean, this is, from, let's see, mid-August, August 11th to August 20th, all 7 of those games against the Diamondbacks take place. So like right after the trade deadline, when we see what we got and what we have, and hopefully at this point, the Padres haven't slid back and gutted their roster. Hopefully these games are very impactful for both teams, and you have, a 2-week stretch there that could mean a lot both clubs. So we'll see how things go. Derek, there was some, we were kind of teetering into the buyers versus sellers conversation, after last week. Obviously what we've seen the last few days against the Angels, you probably pump the brakes on that a little bit, but at what point, if they revert back to, if this is just another, one of those, if this is false hopes like we've seen in, pretty much all season, and they revert back to being the club that we've seen to this point, at what point do you say, you know what? We got some pieces that might be able to get us a little bit of capital that could help us in the future. It's time to pivot. This season's a wash, and let's see what we can get out of some of these guys.
Are you asking me to predict the thinking of AJ Preller?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not going to try and make my money doing that. That's that man sees things in a way that's really nobody else is capable, both in a good and sometimes in a bad way. AJ is as creative as they come, and AJ has as good a handle on things as anybody else does in Major League Baseball. And I think AJ at the 2021 deadline, I think he learned a ton, because it was the Adam Frazier deal and then Daniel Hudson. And then you see what happened everywhere else. And we've talked about it on this podcast. It was like the clubhouse lost hope because they knew they were losing starting pitchers. They knew they couldn't contend, and what the hell are we doing? And then it all fell apart. And then you go to the 2022 trade deadline, and it is bring me everyone. It is Josh Hader, Juan Soto, Brandon Drury, Josh Bell. They added everything you could possibly think of and then some to make that team better. And you saw what happened. They made a run to the National League Championship Series. So I think AJ learned a ton from 2 years ago. Now, the thing about this team that's unique is, what do they really need? It's okay. Obviously, some bullpen depth, some fresh arms there. With Walker's health, they probably could use a starting pitcher, although it is not nearly as dire as it was in 2021. And you could probably use maybe, another outfield bat, like a right-hand platoon with Grisham to play center field, or somebody in right when Tatis can move over to center. Like that, it's not a whole lot of glaring needs this year. So Cosgrove has kind of taken over the whole Tim
how
Hill
about that guy?
Spot, and he's been amazing. I mean, what he did against Shohei, what the Padres did against Shohei Ohtani, 0 for 10 in the series, is incredible, because he came in red hot.
And one of his worst starts of the season too.
Yeah, and Jake Cronenworth starts to swing the bat better. What is it about that guy? It's like scuffling. Here comes arguably the best pitcher in the game, 2 doubles and a bomb. Like, what make him pitch? He's going to probably have a double and a bomb against Verlander on Friday night too, because he just steps his game up against the best of competitions, and you love to see it, but you just want to see him do that against everybody now. But this team doesn't have a whole lot of really glaring needs, so now it's tinkering. I mean, they DFA'd Nelson Cruz, which was, I think, the right move, but also a bit of a surprise given how revered he is in that clubhouse. So, what are you trying to do? Get a little more flexible on the bench, I guess. You're looking at tinkering parts right now, and then hoping that everybody who you're paying all this money to plays the way they're capable of playing, like they should have been all year. They started to play like in the last 3 games or so. So I think that's a very long-winded way of saying I couldn't really identify a massive glaring need on this team. So will they be sellers? They'd have to fall off a cliff in the next 2.5 weeks to truly be sellers. Will they be buyers? They'll have to go on a 20-game winning streak in the next 2.5 weeks to truly be buyers. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. The middle ground is you tinker, maybe buy small, or maybe you sell small and see if somebody else in the system you want to take a look at can come up and show you something. I don't think we're going to see wholesale changes, anything like we saw in 2022, and really nor should there be.
And I wonder, like, maybe it's a bit more like 2020 sans the Clevenger deal, because that was kind of the blockbuster. But like Mitch Moreland, it didn't pan out, but that was the right move at the time. A lefty bat, a guy that was hitting 300. Trevor Rosenthal filled the need in the bullpen. Lights out closer the rest of the way for them. They also picked up Nola and some other pieces. But yeah, maybe kind of, as you like to say, around the margins a little bit more than certainly. I mean, you're never going to replicate, like the biggest, one of the biggest blockbusters in baseball history. You're certainly not going to come to that level. And I don't think anybody thinks that they need it, because it's like pure talent hasn't been the issue with the team. It's just guys not playing up to their capabilities. Todd, you and I kind of spoke about it. Like, how surprised would you be if they were sellers? Because that seems like so counter to this club's MO to see them punt, especially, you know, what we've just spent 10 minutes talking about, how you could go up and down the standings and say, I don't know about them, I don't know about them, I don't know about them. It would seem like a shock. There was a point in the last week where it felt a little bit like, if we keep going in this direction, it's a no-brainer. You can help yourself out long term, but it would be so anti-Preller and Seiler based on what we've seen from them.
100%. They will not be sellers. They are going to tinker, as Derek said, maybe add to the bullpen. They are confident, even as terrible as they have played. And for sure, there are definitely some issues within the structure of the organization and maybe within the locker room and some coach, GM, front office things. But everyone in that organization is still confident that they have enough talent and the right mix for postseason success. So they're definitely not going to be sellers. They believe in this team they've created. And this team should have the time, a full season, to show us, you know, that they can do it. So there's no sense in selling off right now. I understand the prospects, but they're not far enough away. There's not going to be a major trade. There's just not going to be a huge trade. You're not sending Xander Bogaerts out or Soto or something out. You're going to ride this team. You're going to tell these guys you believe in them. This is why you got them together. Let's keep going. Let's get better. And let's take this thing to the top. Let's play our best baseball and make it happen in the second half of the postseason. And I think that's, even though the guys, as we've all talked to them post-game and pre-game, they're frustrated. They don't understand why they're not playing better. But all of them still believe they're capable of great things. They still think they're going to turn it around. And I think that's the prevailing mindset within baseball, whether it's experts that cover the game or opposing teams. They still fear this Padre team, and they still think they're capable of great things.
Because when you see it, you know what I mean? Like when you see what they did, particularly Monday and Tuesday, when Bogaerts has his power back, and when Manny Machado's doing what he does, and when Jake Cronenworth down like 5 or 6 in the lineup is hitting the way he has, it's just a completely different ball club with the starting. I mean, Blake Snell continues to be lights out. And he wasn't, you know, at the level that he had been, but still really, really good, and gave them the start that they needed and got out of some trouble and did it kind of in some different ways, getting, you know, the double play balls and that sort of thing. Joe Musgrove looks like, I mean, he said it after Tuesday, you know, feeling like he's kind of getting healthy, and he had a great feel for the changeup, a pitch that, you know, had been kind of a little bit like, you know, one start to the next for him. You know, you're seeing it all come together. The one thing is the bullpen. I mean, their bullpen ERA is now 3.78. That is good for, like, which certainly isn't bad, 6th in the league, but they were first, I think, at like sub-3 for a while. So suddenly that's become a bit of a bugaboo for them. But it's just, when you see the potential, it's so easy to get like lured right back in. Because there's nothing subtle about it. They have these like explosive type performances and 2 or 3 game stretches where, like, okay, this has the look of a team that could really do some things.
Hey guys, funny Blake Snell story. So my dad's down for the weekend, had the Padre game on the other day, and he looks up, and it's 5th inning, and Snell's at like 98 pitches, and my dad goes, "Holy beep, he's almost at 100 pitches." And I'm like, welcome to a Blake Snell start.
Yep.
That's about right. That's right. I mean, he's been really, really good. He's been really,
great.
Really good.
But he still throws a lot of pitches in very few innings.
Yeah. But you know, he's gotten them through 6 and 7 for the most part, and obviously limited the damage. And so,
yeah,
you know, I think we were all really kind of frustrated and annoyed. But that was April, and he pretty much turned it on in May. Maybe had like 1 stinker since then, and has been phenomenal. So, yeah, I don't know. Things have come together, and I was just looking at kind of some of the recent. You know, Jake Cronenworth, last 7 games, slashing 348, 429, 609, 8 hits, 7 ribbies, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. I don't know why, you know, and he kind of backdoored his way into that All-Star appearance last year after a slow start, and it's taken him a lot longer to kind of get going. But this is the Jake Cronenworth we know we can see from time to time. And, you know, there's a lot of talk to, you know, he and Machado, and, you know, the back-to-back games, Tuesday and Wednesday, they had totaled like 7 hits and 8 RBIs, give or take. If you're getting that just from those two, and not even counting Fernando Tatis Jr., not even counting Juan Soto, it's going to win you some games. And finally hitting with runners in scoring position. Now, they didn't do that on Wednesday, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're not going to do it every night. You're just not. I think what happens is we start to get stuck in this, like, they're 1 for their last 87 with runners in scoring position. If you do it, 4 times a week, and then the other couple of times your starters give you a really good outing, so you really don't need to, or that you're hitting a couple of 2-run bombs in there because you had a guy at first, and that's not runners in scoring position, so you're still scoring runs that way. It's okay. It's when they get in these long stretches, and that's the only way they had a chance to score runs because they're not hitting homers. That's when the risk thing starts to become a major factor.
And I mean, for Bogaerts, his high leverage numbers were just abysmal. So it's good to see him, get the dribbler that he needed, that play to the run. What was it, in the 8th inning? Ended up being their final run of the game, just, making enough contact. And Derek, I know you nerd out over this stuff. On Tuesday,
that's a long list, aren't I?
There's a long list, but this is going
Star
to be
Wars, Murder She Wrote.
Murder She Wrote, yeah.
Missions,
I didn't know about
California
Batman,
Auburn.
Batman.
Yeah, it goes down the list. Didn't know about Murder She Wrote until the last week. I like that. That was a standby in the Tripp household growing up. But there was a lot of talk about Bogaerts' swing and the preparation he was doing before Tuesday's game and pulling the baseball. And it's funny, we hear so much. How much have we talked about Juan Soto going the opposite way? Manny Machado, when he's got to go in the opposite way. And so it's a little bit different. But he spoke afterwards about getting to the inside pitch. And so much of the season, it was just something weak, when he was getting pitched inside. And so he worked on really being able to kind of turn on it and get something productive out of it. And we started to see that. And so, when we talk about the wrist and just kind of how that's continued to bother him and zap some of the power, all of a sudden we're seeing some of the power. And so again, hopefully it's a sign of things to come with him. And we know how important he could be with this lineup for this lineup.
Edgar Martinez is the guy I always think about when you say that. He's the only guy that I ever saw, and I don't know, I haven't seen it since. I don't know if anybody else does it, but he was the only one I ever saw who would take batting practice with, back when guys used like the thin donuts, before they had these, giant sleeves that are like, 12 inches long that would go on the end of the bat. He would put on one of those like you'd get from like Big Five when you're in like 8th grade. He put one of those things on the bat and take batting practice with it. And it wasn't to try and get the extra bat speed. He was making sure that was like a visual cue for him that he had to make sure the ball hit on the outside, because that's basically the start of the barrel, right? Where the donut would stop. So he would take it, and that would teach him to keep the barrel through the hitting zone as long as possible. And he would always think, I'm hitting the ball from right center to left center field. He would always try and work the middle of the field, because if he's doing that, he's keeping the barrel in the hitting zone as long as possible. And his hands naturally adjusted. Ball's inside, you get to it on the inside, you'd pull it. Ball's outside, you'll travel a little bit deeper. You'd still be able to drive it with authority the opposite direction. So that's what I think Xander Bogaerts and any great hitter, when they're at their best, is I'm thinking I'm hitting the ball from right center to left center to right center. I'm working the middle of the field, because that keeps the barrel through the hitting zone as long as possible. You saw with Jake Cronenworth when he had the game against Ohtani. Those were some of the best swings I've seen him take all year, because his hands and his barrel were in the hitting zone as long as I've seen him. He was keeping his hands behind the barrel and just driving the ball, trying to drive right back up the middle. And then naturally you get out front and you pull a pitch, or naturally you stay back and you hit a line shot to left center field. When he's doing that in the right mental frame and just keeping that barrel through there as long as possible, he's so naturally talented that Xander Bogaerts is going to do what he did against the Angels, have some big knocks, come up with some, drive the ball with some authority to all fields. It's going to work for him. So if he's gotten back to doing that, again, we're going to see the guy that we're paying $280 million for.
Yeah. Yeah. And just big picture stuff. If all these guys hit 80% of how they're capable of hitting, that solves all sorts of issues. That solves your bullpen issues. That solves your clubhouse issues, if there are any. That solves any kind of starting pitching injury woes you have. If these guys just hit at 80%, if your big guys hit at 80% of what they're capable of, all those guys in that lineup solve so many issues and put so much pressure on opposing staffs. It's just, that's the ticket.
Manny Machado, and this is encouraging for Manny because we're not, Jay Cronenworth, it's 7 games. It's basically a week. And so, to be determined. But when you look at what Manny's done, you can go back 28 games, slashing 310, 347, 535, 36 hits, 7 homers in 28 games. 18 strikeouts. So I mean, his strikeout rate is down from what it had been to that point in the season, a few ticks. But for close to a month now, we've seen Manny Machado be Manny Machado. And shout out to him for passing Adrian Gonzalez and now being alone in the Petco Park home run record, 2 ahead of his boy Will Myers. But that's he was such a source of frustration. You get the contract coming after this MVP season and just didn't look like a shell of himself. Now he's playing to Manny Machado levels on top of what he does for you defensively, which I think is
by the way, shout out to SoCal Refugee who's watching us on YouTube. I just saw that in the chat. He said, I'm from Missouri. Show me. It's a show me state.
Well, let's show him then. Boom.
There you go.
Boom. There you go.
There you go, SoCal Refugee.
Wow, there it is. It's even on the screen now for those of you listening on the podcast.
Hey, get in on the chat. Let us know what you think. Are the Padres back? Let us know how you feel about what you've seen, and we'll get to your comments.
Hey, Darnay, with regards to Machado, he's so important because he is the guy. He's not to take a Reggie Jackson or Darryl Strawberry reference, but he's the straw that stirs the drink in that team, in that locker room. He's the guy that makes that team go, that everybody kind of orbits around. So when he's playing well on the field, that's obviously you see the benefits there. But within the locker room, that's very important too, because the guys all kind of vibe off Manny, and he sets the tone in that locker room. And when he's feeling good, I really believe the team's feeling good. So it's important for Manny to get back to being a little more Manny after that dreadful start to the season. And you see,
he was getting pissed.
He was frustrated.
Like he was mad. He wouldn't be on frustrated. He was mad. He was mad at how things were going. He was mad at having to answer questions about the way that things were going. He was mad that the situation existed. So now it looks like he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make sure this situation don't exist no more, so we can start doing what we need to do, and y'all can stop talking to me about this crap.
Yeah. Xander Bogaerts last 10 games, 293, 72, 500, 2 home runs. Much better from him as well. Manny does not want us to use the word urgency anymore, Derek. that was a takeaway Monday. I made the mistake of using the word urgency. Like, do you feel that at this point in the season? He said everybody's talking about urgency. People keep using the word urgency to describe us, and was not a fan of that. And
okay, immediacy, whatever. Insert adjective here.
I know. For him, they just need to play better baseball. So, it's kind of a boring approach, but you see that often in sports. It's like they don't buy into some of the stuff and the conjecture and all that stuff that we like to use. It's just simple: play better baseball. And to his credit, they backed it up that night. And so maybe it is a little bit more simple than that, rather than blowing everything up and making everything seem like it's doom and gloom and now or never and all that stuff. Maybe there is something to be said for just taking a more relaxed approach and saying, hey, let's just be us. You know what I mean? If we're just us, it'll be good enough.
I love Manny Machado, and I respect Manny Machado as a baseball player, but he's off base on this. There was urgency. They were 9.5 games, right, out of the wild card chase. They were 8 games under 500, closing in on the trading deadline with, as we just talked about, 6 to 7 teams ahead of them in the National League wild card. It was go time. There's not a lot more, 2 more weeks of scuffling baseball. This season could be lost. There was urgency. So he may not have felt the urgency. They may, as we talked about, have such confidence that they were going to turn it around. But there was urgency. These starting last week and then the next 3 weeks leading up to the trade deadline, that's go time for the Padres. There was no time to fiddle around anymore. So Manny, like you as a baseball player, disagree with you as when it comes to adjectives about the Padres season. It was urgent for sure.
Yeah, they needed that. They needed that in a bad way. And I know you don't want to hear it, I know it's hard to hear that you guys have stunk a lot and now you have to stop stinking because you put your back is so far against the wall that you're going to have to start replacing drywall portions if you do not, in fact, start playing better. I get that. It sucks to have to hear that. But the reality of the situation is what the reality of the situation is. Manny laws tell you it is what it is, and do you need to start playing better baseball? Yes, that's never been in debates or in disputes. When has been the issue here? And guess what? The time is now, because if you let this go another week to 10 days, your general manager has to start seriously considering selling pieces off and calling this season a wash. So yeah, there is urgency, there is immediacy, there is a dire need to start ASAP. Do this aura now, go now. You don't have any more wiggle room. There's no more time for delaying or screwing around. You have to start playing better baseball now. And the definition of that is urgently get it the hell done.
Well, and I don't think, his manager would, if you've been listening to Bob Melvin, that sounds like a guy that's feeling urgency. You know what I mean? And maybe Manny's not playing for his job. Bob Melvin, might be. I don't think he should be, but might be, because if things go south, and I don't know if this is a conversation for now, but if things go south, like to steal the words of Ron Fowler, like somebody's head's gonna roll, and maybe it's just the ceremonial firing of the manager because that's what they've done, through the years and through AJ Preller's.
Who's better? That goes always back. Okay, if you're gonna make a move,
no, I agree.
Who's better? But they have to know that, right? Unless the only other guy would be, okay, if the Mets get rid of Buck Showalter, he's the only other guy who would be available out there with the kind of resume that Bob Melvin has. Like, where do you go? You go back to a first-time manager like a Jace Tingler type? Like, how's that worked out for you the last 5, 6, 7, 8 times you've done that? The only first-time manager that's ever worked for him is Bruce freaking Bochy. And you've just caught lightning in a bottle and then got rid of him so we could go and win 3 World Series in San Francisco. And by the way, instantaneously turn the Rangers around without Jacob deGrom. So he's making things work there. Bob Melvin is doing everything he can to make things work here. There is no one better. You cannot tell me there is a better candidate that would be available right now, unless for some reason Bobby Cox wants to come out of retirement. There's nobody who's better than you're going to get than Bob Melvin. So that's just it's to entertain those talks is stupid. If anybody, it would be AJ, because he's the one that put this group of people together, and it still hasn't worked. So maybe now you're talking about what's the roster construction, and the roster construction is squarely in the hands of AJ Preller. If anybody, you start looking at him.
Look, and Seidler threw his confidence behind AJ to the UT, and AJ went on Ben Woods and said, "Hey, it's my responsibility. This is the crew I put together." I don't know. I think you're right. Just looking at the situation objectively, if you have 3 disastrous seasons in a 5-year stretch, and have only had 1 winning season in a full season, and you get to this point, it's just not working, and the talent there, whatever. You start to wonder, is there like an organizational issue? Is there something with the structure and the ecosystem here? Well, that goes back to the president of baseball operations. And I think that becomes the question that I think was on everybody's mind like a week or two ago, maybe less or so now. Are the keys still in the hands of the guy that got you here to get you out of this situation? And do you really trust that he's the one to do that? Or after an embarrassment in 2019, a once-in-a-century collapse in 2021, and potentially the most disappointing season in franchise history, do you start to say, we got some pieces here, but maybe somebody else is better equipped to get us out of this situation and get us onto a better place?
What I don't get is, what would you have done differently? And I'm asking myself this too. Would you have not gotten Juan Soto? No. Would you have not gotten Josh Hader? No. Would you have not signed Manny Machado? No. It would go back to, the Hosmer deal. that might be, go back and, okay, well, that might probably is one of the reasons that Manny Machado signed here, is to show the Padres are willing to spend money. Would you have not signed Xander Bogaerts? Absolutely not. Like, what would you have done differently? You're talking about like not offering a contract to Tim Hill and finding a different reliever somewhere. Like, it's the major moves that have been made. Is what would you argue? What would you change? What else would you do? Would you have not extended Fernando Tatis Jr.? No. Like, what else can you do here?
I think there's two that you look at. The Seattle trade with Nola and the Cleveland trade for Clevenger. I think those are two where, like, Cal Quantrill's been pretty good and has had stretches where he's been really good. Ty France has been an all-star. Andres Munoz, his stuff is nasty.
Has it translated though? He's still not taken that step to be a, everyday big league Craig Kimbrell kind of closer.
I just think those are the types of deals where you've narrowed some of your depth. And we were talking about working around the margins not that long ago.
Right.
Maybe some of those pieces could contribute in the way that this team has needed at points over the course of the last few seasons. But I agree. I think, like, there's been a lot of hand-wringing over AJ's deals. And I mean, you look at what has happened to Luis Patino. I haven't heard that name in forever. You know what I mean? Like, what Xavier Edwards, to the Rays as well, and the Tommy Pham deal. Like, there's been a lot of guys that, like, haven't amounted to anything. And, as good as Mackenzie Gore has looked at points, and, as promising as James Wood has been, like, you probably still want Juan Soto, to your point. So I think where I go to is, like, it's funny, Manny was talking about, hey, you need your whole 26-man roster to win games. I think the problem with the Padres is it's just that. It's just the 26-man roster. And Bob Melvin has said in the past, you need your whole 40-man roster to win games. They haven't had like a 40-man roster to win them games. They've needed their top 25 to deliver. And if they haven't, then there's been issues. And we saw that in 2021. And so that's where I think we talk about development, we talk about this and that and analytics and how they use it. And we don't really, how much of that do we really know? How much of that is just kind of conjecture and say, hey, maybe it's that thing over here. It's hard to really tell. But what is tangible is there's just not guys that have been ready and available to come up when they've needed it. How many corner outfielders have they cycled through in hopes of finding somebody that can do anything? And then they've run into issues like in back end of 2021 where they're having to go to Jake Arrieta and Vince Velasquez because they don't have a young arm that's ready to come up and give them consistent innings. So Ryan Weathers hasn't been that guy. Jay Groom, for whatever reason, hasn't popped this year. And so that's where I feel like those have been the weaknesses in AJ Preller's tenure. The splashy moves, the level of talent, it's incredible. But, it's like when the Warriors traded away everybody for KD. You didn't have that second lineup that could come in and run you off the floor. Now they also
weren't expecting both him and Klay Thompson to miss the entire finals.
And they won too. You know what I mean? And so, like, it worked. But that's where you sacrifice some of your depth, and I think that's come back to hurt them at points, and certainly at points this year when, Tatis has missed some time and, you have little injuries or slumps here or there where you wish you could poach somebody from El Paso and they give you a good couple weeks. That just doesn't happen for this team.
Well, you guys are both right. And the thing is, being a GM of a professional sports team is hard. For you to have a perfect record and a perfect organization. No. A perfect organization is rare. The Padres, yes, Preller has had missteps, of course, and revisionist history here and there. But as you're both saying, for the most part, Preller has nailed many of the big moves. And we can all nitpick as Padre fans, like, this deal, we shouldn't have done this deal. We should have done this deal. But the only thing that matters is AJ Preller. Is Peter Seidler, does Peter Seidler believe in AJ Preller? Is AJ Preller Peter Seidler's guy? And Seidler doubled down this week in his comments saying, yes, I believe in AJ Preller. So, like, he's the boss and he likes the guy he's got right under him running this organization. So we can all nitpick and stuff like that. But Peter Seidler loves what AJ Preller has done. And he thinks that AJ Preller is the guy to right the ship this season and set the course for this franchise for years to come. You can say that faith is misguided and what are Peter Seidler's criteria for making this decision, but that's what he believes, and he believes in Preller.
You could argue that as of right now, the biggest piece that AJ has traded away is David Bednar, who is now a two-time All-Star. And if you saw that one coming, go be a scout. Because you saw something that literally no one else on the planet, even David Bednar's parents, saw coming.
Yeah.
So
was that the Musgrove
that's
deal?
The one that got away. Like Tucupita Marcano was supposed to be, the big deal, the big piece in that, No, Bednar turned out to be the guy who found some other gear, and now he's a two-time All-Star reliever for the Pirates. Like that's the one. And Ty is going to hit till the end of time. Ty Fran's up in Seattle because we always knew, we saw when he was at San Diego State, we knew he would always hit. He's just a good kid, a solid guy to have in your lineup. He's probably going to make maybe another All-Star game probably sometime in his career, and he'll have a nice long career and be a very well-respected player in Seattle, probably for the next decade. But other than that,
you add up, if you put players in on one side, players out on the other, players in is a much greater impact than players lost. Sure, they've lost some gems
as of
here
right
and there.
now. As of right now. Now, CJ Abrams might be a 10-time All-Star. We don't know. Mackenzie Gore comes out here looking like Sandy Koufax for the first couple of innings he threw against the Padres at Petco Park. We knew he had that kind of potential. But again, you're getting Juan Soto. And James Wood has kind of stalled. Robert Hassel III has dropped down all the prospect rankings. I don't know what happened to him. James Wood, I think we all agree, still is going to be a stallion at some point. But again, that's 4 or 5 years down the road. Okay, if you're going to get Juan Soto now, you still got to do something like that. I don't know what else I would do. I think, Darnay, the one in 2020 was Seattle and Cleveland, just the wholesale changes there. That's probably the stuff you can look at and go, maybe got taken a little bit because Nola hasn't panned out and the catching's been a problem, but also nobody knew that Luis Campusano was going to have a thumb problem this year. He was probably going to be the guy. So it's, it's revisionist history, but it hasn't been all that bad.
Well, hopefully, if they just win some games, we won't be having these conversations. We won't have these existential crises that we have to address with this team, which would be nice. Wrap up the first half with 3 against the Mets. Hopefully we can keep it rolling, and then All-Star break. And we will see what the second half brings. Great being with you, fellas, and we will catch you next week.
Peace out.